Uh, Dolphin fans are ready for a change under center after a dreadful start. They want Shadur Sanders traded to the Dolphins. Should Miami make a new move, Ocho?
You trade Shadur Sanders. You clearly are not sold on him right now. You're not sold on the progress that he's making, even though you're saying, hey, we're happy with where he's at.
I'm going to be livid if it goes down, by the way.
Breaking news: the storm around Shadur Sanders has only grown louder. Once just whispers, now it's the center of league-wide conversation. And this time, the speculation involves a blockbuster name, Tua Tagovailoa. After Miami's opener, frustration boiled over. Tua, under relentless pressure, faltered. A costly fumble became the headline, and with it, the patience of Dolphins fans began to wear thin. Social media lit up, sports talk shows zeroed in, and suddenly the calls for change grew impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Sanders, young, promising, and untested at the pro level, is attracting eyes across the league. Teams desperate for a future star are circling, and Miami now finds itself in the middle of a high-stakes dilemma. Do they gamble their present for the possibility of a brighter tomorrow? The Dolphins know the clock is ticking. If they want Sanders, they can't hesitate. But here's the question every fan is asking tonight. Should Miami really pull the trigger? Because one bold move could alter not just their season, but the trajectory of both franchises involved, the Dolphins and the Browns. This is where the story heats up. Let's break down the latest trade buzz and what it could mean for the future of football in Miami.
I don't like when players do that.
Ain't lie.
Yeah, I don't like when players do that. Obviously, you would know him better than.
Shannon Sharpe has now put the spotlight directly on Miami. According to him, the Dolphins are seriously weighing their options because Tua Tagovailoa's performance hasn't lived up to expectations. Inside the building, confidence is slipping. The front office sees the long season ahead and wonders if Tua is really the man who can carry them deep into the playoffs. Enter Shadur Sanders. Young, dynamic, and commanding attention across the league, he's quickly become the name everyone's circling. For Miami, the temptation is obvious. But this isn't a simple pursuit. They can't just walk into the bidding war, not when other teams are lining up with interest of their own. Meanwhile, in Cleveland, head coach Kevin Stefanski has already addressed the rumors. He admits the hard truth. In the NFL, you can't hold on to every piece forever. Still, the Browns aren't blinking. They're standing firm, refusing to let go of the quarterback they see as the future of their franchise. And here's the reality. If Sanders were to leave Cleveland, the ripple effect would be seismic. The Browns' entire blueprint, their very relevance in the AFC, could collapse overnight. Their hopes rest on keeping him in orange and brown, and the stakes, right now, have never been higher.
Those comments back a little bit, but when he said, well, these are going to be tough decisions, and you can't always keep everyone, right?
And then he tried making it like, I was talking about the 90.
Right.
Yeah.
Inside Cleveland, the debate is heating up. Some insiders are beginning to whisper what once seemed unthinkable. If Shadur Sanders is truly on the trading block, maybe the Browns should strike while his value is at its peak. His stock has never been higher, and the interest is undeniable. Multiple franchises, with the Miami Dolphins leading the charge, are circling, ready to make a play. For Cleveland, the question becomes brutal in its simplicity. Do they hold on to the quarterback they believe can define their future, or cash in now and reshape the franchise in an entirely different direction? The tension inside the organization is reaching a breaking point.
You trade Shadur Sanders. You clearly are not sold on him right now. You're not sold on the progress that he's making, even though you're saying, hey, we're happy with where he's at.
I'm going to be livid if it goes down, by the way.
The more Cleveland attempts to downplay Shadur Sanders' significance, the worse the backlash becomes. Every public statement that minimizes his role only fuels louder criticism, intensifying the pressure that already surrounds the organization. What was meant to be a strategy of control has instead created chaos, leaving the Browns scrambling to contain a narrative that refuses to die. For Miami, however, the story looks very different. If the Dolphins were to secure Sanders, the impact wouldn't just be on the field. His arrival would electrify their roster energize their fan base, and catapult the franchise into the national spotlight in ways they haven't experienced in years. It's the kind of move that redefines a team's identity overnight. But inside Cleveland, resistance to a trade is fierce. Ownership, led by Jimmy Haslam, is applying direct pressure to see Sanders on the field. Haslam, sources say, is prepared to make a decisive move, a clear sign of how high the stakes have risen. And it's not just whispers within Berea. Colin Cowherd has hinted that Sanders could be starting as early as November. The clock is ticking. If the Browns continue to rack up losses, the weight on Kevin Stefanski and his staff may become unbearable. At that breaking point, the gamble will no longer be avoidable. Sanders will be unleashed, tasked with igniting the spark Cleveland so desperately craves. And if he delivers, even in flashes, the outcome is inevitable. Fans will demand more. Headlines will follow. And the push for Sanders to become the permanent starter will only grow louder until his name dominates the narrative week after week.
And the first 4 weeks, the staff is going to tell him, Shedur's not ready, Shedur's not ready. My guess is they go 0-4, maybe they go 1-3. Haslam's going to come down on Sunday, October 5th, and he says, I want Shadur to play.
Colin Cowherd took it a step further, revealing what many had only speculated. Browns' ownership is firmly in Shadur Sanders' corner. They see him not just as a quarterback, but as the very future of the franchise, and they want him on the field. But here's where the story takes a turn. Despite ownership's backing, management and the coaching staff aren't quite ready to surrender the keys. Behind closed doors, the front office is searching for ways to buy more time, to delay the inevitable. Their strategy? A slow, calculated introduction, easing Sanders into the spotlight rather than thrusting him into the fire of full-time, starting duties. It's a delicate balancing act. Ownership's urgency clashing with management's caution. And in between stands Sanders, the young quarterback at the center of one of the NFL's most tense and carefully orchestrated power struggles.
I tend to think by Thanksgiving, he'll just potentially be the best quarterback they have, and the fans will be clamoring for him because it's not a very good team and they'll be losing games.
You might be wondering, why is Jimmy Haslam pushing so hard to get Shadur Sanders on a field? The answer goes beyond the X's and O's. It lies in Sanders' growing influence, his undeniable charisma, and a fan base that has already rallied behind him. His presence, both on and off the field, has turned him into the talk of the town. For a franchise that has long struggled to command headlines for the right reasons, Sanders represents something rare: hope, relevance, and star power. But every week he remains on the sidelines. The pressure only intensifies. The conversations grow louder, the calls for change more insistent. Cleveland can feel the walls closing in. And now, with the Dolphins entering the picture, the stakes have climbed even higher. If the Browns were to lose Sanders, it wouldn't just be a roster move. It would be a devastating blow, stripping away their most promising future asset and surrendering the rare momentum they've finally begun to build. The decision looming over Cleveland isn't just about football. It's about the very identity of the franchise.
Yeah. Good to see you. Oh, we got. Well, we got to do some trading. Dion, she's mine.
When you strip away the noise, the speculation, and the media frenzy, the truth is this: a trade sending Shadur Sanders to the Miami Dolphins makes a lot of sense for both sides. For Miami, it would be a bold swing, one that could reshape their quarterback room and, in turn, their postseason aspirations. For Sanders, it could be the opportunity of a lifetime, a chance to step into an environment designed to let him flourish. The Dolphins are not the Browns. They are in a far stronger position, boasting a roster that's already built to contend. Miami has weapons at wide receiver, speed that terrifies defenses, and a defense capable of holding its own against playoff-caliber teams. They're not in a rebuild. They're in win-now mode. And when a franchise is operating at that level, every piece of the puzzle matters. A quarterback who can steady the ship, or better yet, elevate it, becomes priceless. For Sanders, the fit looks even better. In Cleveland, he's locked in limbo. An organization hesitant to hand him the reins, still experimenting with identity, still unwilling to commit to a clear future. Yes, he may eventually get his shot, but the timeline is foggy, uncertain, and dependent on too many factors outside his control. Meanwhile, in Miami, the door could open far sooner. Tua Tagovailoa, despite his flashes of brilliance, remains under intense scrutiny, his inconsistencies magnified with every stumble. If struggles continue, the Dolphins' patience will thin, and suddenly Sanders could find himself center stage. This is where the contrast sharpens. In Cleveland, he waits. In Miami, he could play, and not just play, but thrive, surrounded by talent, competing for playoff spots, and growing under the pressure of high expectations. For a young quarterback with a rising profile and the skill set to match, there may be no better platform. So the question lingers, and it's one worth asking. Should the Dolphins seize this chance, doubling down on their pursuit of postseason glory with Sanders at the helm? Or should the Browns resist the temptation of a trade, holding tight to the quarterback they believe might one day define their future? Either way, the decision will reverberate far beyond these two franchises. It could alter the balance of power in the league.